Once upon a time, in a village called Okwa, in the eastern part of Nigeria, lived a girl called Adora. Adora was the only daughter of Mazi Ikweka, a businessman whose business trade had gone far and beyond the shores of Okwa land. You were not a true businessman if you didn't do business with Mazi Ikweka. Adora was as beautiful as they come. Some would even call her the most beautiful maiden in the land of Okwa. Wherever she went, heads turned and stares prolonged, all wishing they could marry the beautiful maiden. Adora was a 23-year-old girl. She was tall and fair in complexion. Her face was shaped like an egg, her eyes a glowing brown, her brows thick and well trimmed, even though she had never made an effort to trim them herself. She was created beautiful. Some would even call her the girl God created on Sunday. Despite all of Ada's beauty, she was still very obedient and humble. She would clean the house, make food, and go on several errands for her father. Sometimes she extended these services to some of the elders in the village. This was why many elders wished they could marry her for their sons. Ada's mom had died while she was a baby, and her father had to play the mom and dad role to her. He did so beautifully. He taught her all she knew, and he never remarried, even though Ada had wished to get other siblings. On a beautiful Sunday morning, when Ada was preparing breakfast, which consisted of roasted yam and palm oil, doused with pepper and onions, her father called for her from his hut. Adora, Ada diora nwam. Kebi no, her father's voice bellowed from the big hut. Yes, Papa, Anamabia, Adora answered. She hurriedly put the dishes in order and rushed off to answer her father. When she got to the hut, she was surprised to see a woman sitting next to her father, holding hands and laughing at whatever her father said. Ada mama. Ada meji edemba, noduala, onwe ifem chogwagi. Her father said to her, "This is my new wife. Her name is Ngozika, and she will be moving in with us tomorrow, alongside her daughter, Nkechi," her father said. The information hit Ada like a ton of bricks. Yes, she had wished her father would remarry, but that was years ago. Not now that she had grown and could tend to the house herself. It wasn't just that he was married to her, but she also had a grown daughter, one she did not like very much. She knew Nkechi, the village gossip as her friend Oma would call her. Nkechi talked about anyone she didn't like, made up stories just to seem cool and look good. Once she had said that Adora was too full of herself. Adora looked at the woman beside her father. She could see the resemblance now. She had angular cheekbones, a pronounced jawline, narrow eyes with a piercing gaze, big white lips and furrowed brows, exactly like her daughter, only that she was an older version. The next day came sooner than Adora hoped for. Ngozika and her daughter moved in and fast made themselves comfortable in her father's house. They were nice to her and treated her well, but she knew this was a facade, a ploy to win her heart, and soon enough the facade would wear off. It wasn't long after they moved in that they began to truly show the evil and wicked characters they had. Every time her father would travel, they would subject her to unimaginable things while Nkechi lazied around the house. This continued for a long time, and every time she would try to talk to her father about it, he would brush it off, saying it was not true and that Ngozika seemed like a good person. 2 years later, Adora's father traveled for business, as he usually does. Only that this time, it was different. Adora could feel it. She even warned her father against traveling, but he paid no heed to her. He was a businessman after all, and as such, he needed to travel. A few days later, after he traveled, Adora received news that her father had died on his way. How he died, they did not say, neither was his body found. She mourned her father, while her stepfamily decided that it was a perfect time to wreck her father's wealth. The once prominent empire that Maazi Ikweka had spent years building reduced to nothing. Ngozika and her daughter spent lavishly buying the latest beads and jewelries they could lay hands on, while she was left to adorn herself with rags. When the money eventually ran out, they resulted in making Adora pick up menial jobs, working on people's farms and cleaning their huts, just so they could spend all of her earnings while leaving her with little or nothing to survive on. The once most beautiful maiden had become a shadow of herself. One day, while Adora was working on Mazi Nduka's farm, she heard a cry for help and immediately rushed to help. She saw a man laying on the ground and quickly rushed to help him. He was injured by a tree branch. "Please, help me. I can't move my leg," he groaned in pain. "Hold still, I'll be right back," Adora said to him, and she quickly went to the bush to get some herbs. She was as quick as possible and rushed back to the man in pain. She squeezed the herbs until their liquid started to come out, and then she placed it on the face of his wound, which made him grunt in more pains. "This will heal your wounds fast. You need to tend to it often though," she said to him. "Where are you coming from? And how did you get here?" she asked. "I was taking a walk with my brother before I got injured. He went to get help." "Okay, I will stay with you until he comes. I will help you to a shade," Adora offered, and he simply nodded and stretched his hands out to her to guide him. They sat in the shade for a while, waiting for the man's brother to get back. It became dark and there was still no sight of him. Adora needed to get going, but she didn't want to leave the injured man there. There were worse things than a tree branch in the bush that could hurt him. Adora took him to her best friend's house, Oma. Oma was shocked to see Adora and an unknown man standing in front of her hut. "Ada, what is going on? And who is this man with you?" Oma asked. "He is a man I met in the farm. He's injured and I don't know where to take him," Ada answered. "But you have brought him to my house. Do you want my parents to have my head?" Oma said. "I am sorry, Oma. I couldn't take him to my house because of my stepmother. I remembered you telling me that your parents traveled to Iguacha for business and will not be back until after 4 Eket market days," Ada said. "But that doesn't mean you can bring a stranger to my house. What if he dies? What if the villagers find out?" "Ada, this is bad idea," Oma panicked. "None of that will happen, Oma. I will tend to him for as long as he is here. And you know I'm good with herbs. He will be out of here in no time," Ada assured her friend. Oma obliged and let the strange man stay. He was in a bad condition. She could tell by the wound on his legs, and all he did was grunt. Every day, Adora would sneak out of her house to go see the strange man. This happened for 3 days, and she hoped the man would get better. At least better enough to find his way back home. It was becoming difficult to lie to her stepmother why she needed to visit Oma every day. Just like she hoped, the stranger was healthy and strong enough to go. "Thank you so much for all your help. If you had left me in the bush, I could have been dead already," he said. "Well, thank the gods that you are not. I am happy to have helped," Adora said. He turned to Oma and thanked her as well for letting him stay at her hut, even though she had no idea who he was. With his wound almost completely healed, he was set to leave. "What is your name, strange man?" Adora asked, realizing that all this while they only made reference to him as strange man. "I thought you'd never ask," he smiled, a smile that could light up the world. Also Ada thought. "My name is Chimera." Ada thought the name as beautiful as the bearer. After a few more pleasantries, he set out on his way. It was now some days after the strange man had gone, when Ada and Oma sat in her hut discussing. "Did you know that there was a search party looking for the prince?" Oma asked Adora as they feasted on a bowl of abacha. "I thought the prince lives in Obodoyibo. How come they are looking for him?" Adora answered with a question of her own. "Yes, he was, but I heard he came back some moons ago, although they have called off the search now," Oma answered. "Oh, really? Does that mean they have found him?" Ada asked. "Yes, I heard so," Oma answered. "Ah, Oma, you can hear oh. How do you even hear these things?" Ada asked, and they both laughed about it. Few days later, it was announced that the Egu festival would commence in some days' time. This was the festival where the prince gets to choose his bride from all the eligible maidens in the village. The maidens were to dress in their best attires, wear their best jewelries, and give their best performance on the dance ground. The festival day came fast. The tailors showcased their talents by the exquisite attires they sewed. Jewelers sold out their jewels faster than they could restock. The whole village bustled with excitement. Decorations were going on in the village square. Adora watched her stepsister Nkechi prepare for the festival. She bought the most expensive fabrics and jewelries. Ada wished she could go for the Egu festival. She was a beautiful dancer and would sometimes dance with her father around their compound. Ngozika, her stepmother, had warned her strictly to never step out of the compound on that day. She piled a lot of works for Adora to keep her occupied. Ngozika feared that if the prince were to see Adora, he would be completely taken by her beauty. She wanted her daughter to get picked by all means. She would go to any length to make it happen. Days before the festival, she had secretly met with the Onowu, who was the mouthpiece of the king, and he assured her that he had a great influence on the decisions made in the palace and would make sure it goes in her daughter's favor. This promise, however, came with a condition. She had to lay with him. "If this would guarantee that my daughter becomes the next queen of Okwaland, that is a small price to pay," Ngozika thought to herself and went ahead to commit the atrocious act. Finally, the day of the festival came. The sun smiled down brightly on the people of Okwaland, as if to show its approval for the festival. Soon enough, the village square filled with the villagers. Everyone was eager to find out who the prince would pick for his bride. Ngozika and her daughter strolled to the village square. dressed in the expensive traditional wears they had spent a lot of calories to purchase. Ngozika raised her shoulders so high and looked down on every person. She was convinced in her heart that her daughter would become the next queen of Okwaland. Back at home, Adora was swamped with a lot of work. She hoped that she could finish quickly and go watch the festivals. She heard a knock on the makeshift fence in her compound, made out of bamboo woods. She quickly went to open the bamboo door and saw her best friend Oma standing by the door. "What are you doing here? Shouldn't you be at the village square with the other maidens?" Adora asked her friend. Although she was excited to see her, she also worried that she might be missing out on the festivities. "I came to help you with your chores so that we can finish quick and go to the festival. Like the saying goes, 2 good heads are better than one." With Adora and Oma doing the chores together, they finished in record time. Adora got ready fast. She and Oma set out on their way to the village square. As they approached the town hall, they could hear the crowd cheering on the dancers. They walked closer, but could barely see the maidens performing, and so they skimmed their way through the crowd until they got to the front and could see clearly. What Ada and Oma saw next shocked them. They couldn't believe their eyes. They looked at each other to make sure that they were seeing the same thing. Seated beside the king was a young man, one who looked very familiar. He looked exactly like the young man they had helped some days back. "Oma, is that not Chimera?" Adora asked her friend, who quickly concurred that it was indeed Chimera. They started panicking, hoping they had not offended the prince in the short time they had stayed at Oma's place. The prince was bored of the activities, not because he didn't find it interesting. It was simply because he did not think that it was a proper way to find a wife. He hoped he could find someone on his own. But with him getting missing the days ago, his father feared that such could happen again and he could die without an heir. He didn't even get the opportunity to appreciate his helpers. His father assured him that they would visit the good maidens after the festival. The prince looked away from the performers to scan through the crowd. He hoped he would see Adora amongst the dancing maidens, but when he did not, his heart felt heavy. He looked through the crowd, and as if the gods had heard him, he saw 2 people in the crowd with familiar faces, especially the one he had been hoping to see. Without thinking about it, he stood up and walked towards them. When the crowd saw the prince standing up and walking towards the dancers, they cheered louder, thinking he was going to pick out his bride. But when he walked past the dancing maidens to the other side of the crowd, they all looked on with curious stares. Adora and Oma watched the prince as he approached them, and they feared they had done something to upset him. "Adora, should we run away?" Oma asked. "We can't run away from the prince. He will find us with the snap of his fingers. Let us stay and hear whatever he has to say, and bear with it," Adora said, trying to be bold herself. "Ada, I lost hope of seeing you here. I'm so glad you came," Prince Chimera said when he got to where Ada and Oma were standing. Ada looked at Oma and saw the look on her face, which she also had on her own face. Although they did not know what to expect from the prince, but they didn't think he was coming over for some pleasantries. "Chimera, Prince Chimera, we didn't expect to see you here," Ada stuttered. The prince smiled, knowing why she seemed to stutter at her words. "You can call me Chimera, Ada. And hello, Oma. How have you been?" he asked Oma. "I am fine, my prince. Thank you for asking," Oma replied. "Ada, I have longed for you since our paths crossed, and now that I have found you, I am never letting go. the prince poured out his heart to Adora. This declaration made the whole crowd to gasp with surprise. Everyone knew Ada was a beautiful girl, but since her father had died, she became a shadow of herself, most especially since she did not participate in the Egu festival. They could not understand how the prince had found her in the crowd. Although Ada had not expected the turn of events, she couldn't deny the fact that she felt the same way towards him. She always wished she could run into the stranger someday, and the gods seemed to have heard her prayer. Ngozika, Ada's stepmother, screamed from the crowd, "Impossible! That is impossible! My daughter is the rightful owner of that throne." She was screaming so much that she started gasping for breath, and eventually she fainted. She was rushed to the village herbalist, and her daughter followed suit. Ada looked over at her best friend Oma to see her smiling and nodding in approval. "Tell me, my prince, what do you want with me now that you have found me?" Ada asked Prince Chimera. "I want to marry you, Ada, but only if you want that as well," he answered her. He was different from the princes Ada had heard about. They were demanding and didn't care for anyone's opinion. They simply picked a bride and married her without asking much questions. Ada knew that this was the kind of man she wanted to marry. And without wasting any more time, she answered him, "I would like to be your bride to Prince Chimera," she said, and the crowd roared with claps and loud cheers. The wedding and coronation day for Ada and Prince Chimera came fast enough, and soon Ada became the wife of the prince. They both were crowned by the king as the newest king and queen, since the king was old and needed to retire. While the ceremony was going on, someone called out Ada's name from the crowd. She was sure she knew that voice. It sounded so familiar, but she couldn't see who it was. Prince Chimera, noticing the worried look on his bride's face, asked what the matter was, and she explained that she was hearing her name from the crowd, but couldn't find who it was. Prince Chimera ordered the crowd to quieten down and the drummers to stop drumming. That was when the call came again. "Adora! Ada Diora Nwam." Only one person called Ada that way. Immediately she saw the face with the voice. She shouted, "Papa!" She screamed with shock. "Nam, is it really you?" Ada asked as she ran towards her father. "Adam, oh, I have missed you. Don't worry, I will tell you all that happened to me," Ada's father, Maazi Ikweka, said. The crowd dispersed after the shock they had witnessed. The ceremony was already complete, and so Ada was already the queen of Okwaland. After they helped Maazi Ikweka settle down, he narrated his ordeal to them. He was attacked and beaten up by some masked men. They took away all his monies and left him for dead. A good Samaritan, however, came to his rescue and nurtured him back to life. Weeks after he got better, he decided to stay back and find out who sent the men after him. That was when he received the news that shocked him so much. His wife, Ngozika, had planned it all so that she could take all his properties. The king was so infuriated on hearing this and quickly summoned Ngozika to the palace. She had no idea that Maazi Ikweka was alive and had come back. She thought the king wanted to give her some marital gifts from marrying her stepdaughter. She got the shock of her life when she got there and met her husband, who was supposed to be dead. She was immediately held captive after she confessed to the offense. Ngozika was banished from Okwaland, never to return again, because she had attempted to take someone's life, which was an unforgivable offense. The king also found out from the palace guards and the maids what the Onowu had done with Ngozika. He was immediately removed from the position of Onowu and completely from the king's cabinet. He was never to step foot in the king's palace again. With her troubles behind her, Adora was free to embrace her newfound happiness. Adora, now a beloved queen, and Chimera, the new crowned king, lived together in love, bringing prosperity and peace to their land. Their days were filled with laughter, and they lived happily ever after. Did you enjoy this story? Please leave a comment in the comment section telling me what you learned from the story. Please don't forget to click the subscribe button to subscribe to this channel and also give us a thumbs up. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.